In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro offered a balance of the base assemblies ahead of the Constituent Congress of the Working Class, where he highlighted the workers' leading role in the construction of the nation. Bolivian President Rodrigo Paz announced on Thursday the closure of the Ministry of Justice, describing it as a ministry of persecution, injustice and silent sentences. The Palestinian resistance movement Hamas has denounced Israel's violation of the ceasefire following the massacres in Gaza and Khan Yunis. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Sophie Fernandez from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro offered a balance of the base assemblies ahead of the Constituent Congress of the Working Class, where he highlighted the workers' leading role in the construction of the nation. During the ballot session, the head of state Nicolás Maduro emphasized that more than 10,000 base assemblies of the labor movement have been held, and more than 30,000 delegates have been elected. On the other hand, the head of state highlighted that the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, projects an economic growth of 6% of Venezuela's GDP, which reaffirms the sovereignty and strength of the country's real economy despite the blockade and aggression by the U.S. government.
It creates solutions, it creates proposals, and it is a vital force in the new economy of the 13 engines that the country is driving forward. This year, Oxford Economics and CELAC are projecting economic growth of 6% of the country's real gross domestic product. Economists call it gross domestic product. Not because it is gross, the product, but because it is internal to the global economy. When one speaks of the concept of gross domestic product, one is speaking of the entire economy. Last year it grew by 9%. We have had 18 consecutive quarters of growth.
The Venezuelan president also announced that the Bolivarian nation has increased its gas production and affirmed that the first export of that industry to Colombia is ready.
To increase gas production, we are making so much progress in the production of gas that the first export to Colombia is ready. It's at the border waiting for some technical issues to be solved so that Venezuela can begin selling gas to Colombia. Keep that secret for me too. The gas is ready at the border to be sent to Colombia. Some technical and economic elements are still needed, and then the gas will be ready to go. That will be our first shipment of gas, and then we won't stop because Colombia and Venezuela must be united, increasingly united in an increasingly integrated and prosperous economy. With a growing trade, as we already have with our growing binational investments, Venezuela and Colombia must be united in Bolivar's idea of emancipation, freedom, peace, and mutual respect between governments and peoples.
Caracas is known for its dynamism, its rhythms, its flavors, and of course, for its iconic transportation system, the metro. Next, our correspondent Andrea Romero will show us a place that has transformed the routine of those who travel on this means of transport into a unique gastronomic experience.
At Estación Arepa, they don't just serve arepas. Each arepa comes with a creative and innovative touch.
The
concept for this restaurant is an innovation, paying tribute to our main mode of transport here in Venezuela.
The Caracas Metro, the #1 transport for all Venezuelans, used by so many to get to work. With this new location, we're bringing a new homage to our main public transport.
But this restaurant is not just an homage to the metro, it also reinvents the classic Venezuelan dish, arepa. How do they mix tradition and creativity?
For example, the arepas are named after stations. The Sabana Grande arepa has yellow cheese and shredded beef. The capital has shredded cheese and other fillings. And there's another innovation. The arepas are square.
A detail that stands out is the shape. Instead of the classic round arepa, here the dough is made into a square.
Because we are doing something different from the traditional round arepa. Customers, when they come to the table to eat, they always ask, why are the arepas square? And well, we wanted to offer something new, and since corn, one of our staple foods, is so central, we created a square arepa to surprise people.
Square arepas have been a huge hit, and what stands out is that the creativity goes beyond just the idea. The arepas are square, made to order, and named after Caracas metro stations, Mamera, Capitolio, Sabana Grande, and Plaza Venezuela.
We do things the traditional way, like making Venezuelan arepas, start with water. Many think it's flour first, but it's water. Salt, then flour, knead, and we have a mold to make them since the arepa has the concept of the metro of Caracas. What is more Venezuelan than the metro of Caracas, which is the Venezuelans' main mode of transportation, and the arepa is something that us Venezuelans have under our arms since birth, as the saying says. It's something that is typical from our land.
Estación Arepa has won over Caracas diners who don't just enjoy the different shape of the classic dish, but also reaffirm what the arepa means to them.
This one I'm eating is really good. You know, the arepa is Venezuelan and the shredded beef is delicious.
I love arepas. For me, it's the best. I really don't think I could live without arepas. It's part of our culture. It's arepa. I love it. It's tradition.
This initiative is a clear example of the creativity and economic movement that drives our country.
And now we have a short break coming up. But first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Bolivian President Rodrigo Paz announced on Thursday the closure of the Ministry of Justice, describing it as a ministry of persecution, injustice, and selling sentences. At a press conference, the president dismissed Minister Freddy Vidovic just 11 days after he took office, arguing that he had a final judgment against him. He appointed Deputy Minister Jorge Garcia as his replacement, a nomination questioned by Vice President Edman Lara, who pointed out that Garcia has a long list of lawsuits against him that make him unfit for the position. The closure of the Ministry of Justice is unprecedented in Bolivian institutional history and raises questions about compliance with the principle of separation of powers and the continuity of judicial guarantees. In other news, Mexico celebrates the 115th anniversary of the start of the Mexican Revolution with a grand civil-military parade in the capital city. Armed forces contingents gather in the capital Zócalo for the departure for the monument of the revolution. November 20th is one of the most significant civic dates for the country, as it marks the beginning of the Mexican Revolution of 1910s, a struggle that transformed the political, economic, and social structures of the Aztec country. President Claudia Sheinbaum led the event and celebrated the date by recalling the country's achievements.
Mexico is experiencing a moment that once seemed impossible. Today, power is no longer used to subdue, but to serve.
sino para servir. Ya no hay imposiciones.
There are no longer impositions or privileges. There is a constitution, there is democracy, and there is a government that listens, respects, and responds to its people.
Que respeta y que responde a su pueblo. Hoy, las libertades no solo
Today, freedoms are not only granted from above, they are exercised from below, from every neighborhood, from every community, from every voice that speaks with dignity.
de cada voz que habla con dignidad.
Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum also emphasized that today Mexico is a land of freedom and equality without special privileges.
México, ya nadie es
Because in Mexico no one is silenced anymore, no one is persecuted for thinking differently, and that is an achievement of the people in Mexico today.
Hoy, el gobierno dejó de ser un espacio reservado para unos cuantos.
The government is no longer a space reserved for a few, it is no longer a club for the privileged. Today it represents everyone and everyone who studies, who works, merchants,
A los comerciantes, a los jóvenes, a los indígenas, a las mujeres.
young people, indigenous people, women, but above all, it represents those who have less, the humble, so that they can achieve their well-being.
Poder conseguir su bienestar.
Meanwhile, in Argentina, more than 276,000 production-related works have been cut in the country since President Javier Milei took office. The information was provided by a study conducted by the Center for Argentine Political Economy, CEPA, which covered the period from November 2023 till August 2025. The report shows a contradiction in formal employment, the closure of 19,164 companies, and a decrease in the number of workers employed in productive units by 276,624, representing an average of more than 432 jobs lost per day. The report concludes that smaller companies with up to 500 employees accounted for the majority of closures, representing 99.63% of the companies lost. Moving now to Ecuador, in its prisons, nearly 10 inmates were found dead from tuberculosis. The bodies were found in the Littoral Penitentiary of the city of Guayaquil, where in early November the deaths of 8 other inmates were also reported. They had died on different dates and were found with physical deterioration and other conditions. In March 2025, Ecuador experienced an outbreak of tuberculosis, where 12 out of 30 prisons and about 1,115 cases of infection were recorded. In other news, a fire broke out on Thursday in one of the pavilions hosting the 30th conference of the parties, COP30, to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in the Brazilian city of Belém do Pará. The fire started at 2:30 p.m. local time in the Blue Zone, administered by the UN security personnel cordoned off the area and evacuated dozens of people. The governor of Pará and Brazil's Minister of Tourism reported that firefighters quickly brought the fire under control and there were no injuries. Preliminary reports indicated that the fire started in the Indian pavilion, but the causes and origin are unknown. The fire occurred on a key day for breaking and deadlock in negotiations on climate adaptation and roadmaps for phasing out fossil fuels. We have a second short break coming up. Before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Find a short break, but we'll be right back with more from the South. Don't go away. Welcome back. The Palestinian resistance movement Hamas has denounced Israel's violation of the ceasefire, following the massacres in Gaza and Khan Yunis. Hamas condemned the massacre perpetrated by the Israeli occupation in the cities of Gaza and Khan Yunis, which resulted in the assassination of 33 Palestinians, including 12 children and 8 women. In this regard, the resistance movement held the Zionist entity responsible for violating the ceasefire agreement by killing and injuring civilians. Hamas described the massacre as a dangerous escalation, with which the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu seeks to resume the genocide against the Palestinian people, in addition to mentioning the ongoing policy of demolition and destruction of homes, as well as the closure of the Rafah border crossing. Several international organizations have stated that the livelihoods of more than 230 million people are at risk due to extreme heat. According to the report from the Extreme Heat and Agriculture presented at the UN Climate Change Conference COP30, this phenomenon directly affects food production by damaging crops, affecting livestock health and reducing fishing availability. The study also reported that rural workers are 30 times more likely to die from the exposure to extreme heat than workers in other sectors. On the other hand, meteorological and hydrological services emphasize that the combination of preemptive alerts, protection plans for agricultural workers, and sustainable adaptation measures is the most effective formula for protecting lives and crops from the extreme heat. In other news, Indonesian authorities reported the evacuation of nearly 1,000 people, including more than 100 climbers, following the eruption of Mount Semeru on the island of Java last Wednesday. The volcano, one of the most active in the archipelago, remains constantly active and has generated multiple explosions in the last 24 hours. The alert level was raised to level 4, the maximum on the local scale, after pyroclastic flows were recorded on the mountain slide. An exclusion zone for 8 kilometers from the crater was established, a measure that seeks to ensure the safety of surrounding communities. The volcano has emitted large columns of ash of projectile lava and rocks up to 15.5 kilometers down the slope during the last 24 hours. Moving now to Cuba, the authorities carried out an inspection of the settlements affected in Santiago de Cuba after the passage of Hurricane Melissa. The provincial authorities, accompanied by Julio Cesar Garcia, a member of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Cuba, reached the localities of Cayo Grama and Caracoles. The main objective of the visit was to interact directly with the residents who were affected after the passage of Melissa and to learn about their needs. In the communities, the residents said that despite the situation, they have remained united and have shown strong solidarity, helping the most vulnerable neighbors and contributing to recovery of devastated areas. Colombia, the 42nd edition of the Bogota Film Festival kicked off, an event that remains its commitment to independent film and new voices in Latin American cinema. With 2,350 films submitted from 77 countries, this edition confirms the festival's consolidation as one of the essential platforms for independent cinema in Latin America. The event will feature 96 films addressing themes of resistance, memory, and identity, as well as activities, talks, workshops, tributes, and panels on cinema and technology. The event, which will run until November 26, will feature the line Bogota as in New Cinema, to promote emerging talent and provide free spaces for students and film lovers, democratizing access to art house cinema. And speaking of films, we continue in Russia, where the 16th edition of the Brazilian Films Festival is taking place. The event, which will run until December 7th, is being held in 4 Russian cities. The program includes the screening of I'm Still Here by Walter Salis and 6 new films, including dramas and documentaries, such as Portrait of a Certain Ease, Paz Sagrada, and Milton Bituca Nascimento. The Brazilian ambassador in Moscow, Sergio Rodriguez, highlighted the growing interest of the Russian public in Brazilian cinema, pointed out that this cultural exchange strengthens the ties between the two countries. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and join us on social media. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Sophie Fernandez. Thank you for watching.